I have the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I have the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. I have the peace that passeth understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I have the peace that passeth understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. I have the love of Jesus down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I have the love of Jesus down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. For there is therefore now no condemnation down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. For there is therefore now no condemnation down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. Good. 733. 733, I just keep trusting my Lord. 733. I just keep trusting my Lord as I walk along. I just keep trusting my Lord, and He gives a song. The storm clouds darken the sky, o'er the heavenly trail. I just keep trusting my Lord, He will never fail. He's a faithful friend, such a faithful friend. I can count on Him to the very end. Though the storm clouds darken the sky, o'er the heavenly trail, I just keep trusting my Lord, He will never fail.
All right, well, let's ask the Lord's blessing on the Sunday school classes. Heavenly Father, thank you for just the day that you've given to us to gather together, and we pray that you'd use the time in our lives teaching us from your word. Lord, may our hearts be open. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you may be seated. I'd like to welcome you to Faith Baptist Church Sunday School this first day of December. Birthdays and anniversaries. The calendar does not indicate anybody, but I'll ask anyway. Anybody with an anniversary this week? A birthday this week? There it is. Nobody. We'll let the kids be dismissed to their classes. And we'll go to the book of Exodus. Exodus 22. Did anybody have anything exotic for Thanksgiving? Thought I'd ask. All right, Exodus 22. We got the 10 Commandments, or what we label the 10 Commandments, in Exodus chapter 20. General commands. No elaboration when God says that thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not, it's just, there's no elaboration we understand stealing is taking that which is not yours, but God is saying anything, whether it's reputation, credit. There are those that, because they're in a position of authority, they take credit for all those. And to be fair, there is an element of credit deserving them. Because if you're working under somebody, the ideal is they are collaborating with you, working with you. They are the ones that put you in charge or to accomplish whatever it is. So there's an element of credit that is due to the higher up you go in authority. But still, God begins to expand on it in chapters 21, 22, and we'll see. And chapter 22, he starts out with stealing. Why does he use an ox?
Very common animal.
Okay, a common animal.
That they need for work.
Yes, it's a common, productive piece of property. Something that would gain the attention of everybody. If in God's directions, if we were there and God said, if a man steal an apple and made the example an apple, we'd say, well, I don't know. Okay, if he really wants to steal an apple, I assume as kids, by technicality, maybe we stole pomegranates. I don't know how when the branches are over your fence is out in public property, is that public domain? I don't know. What do you think, Rick? Would that be your yard? What it's the sidewalk and a branch of the tree, loaded with pomegranates, is hanging over your property line out into the public walkway, and we would grab a pomegranate.
I would say that's a civil issue, contact an attorney. Not touching it.
Okay. So I'm not sure if we were felons as kids or not.
Yeah,
But anyway, so God uses the ox. We're down to verse number 4. He says, if the thief be certainly found in his hand alive, the theft. So if the ox or whatever is the item, and we also see a sheep, if it's found in his hand alive, he hasn't gotten rid of it, he hasn't slaughtered it, or whatever else he might do with it, whether it be an ox, ass, or sheep, he shall restore double. So what God is doing, he's establishing a base penalty. He doesn't just get off. He just doesn't, oh, well, you recovered your belongings. Everything's good now. No, God said, no, everything's not good. He has to pay double. Why would that be? I mean, if you got your ox back, where's the problem?
Not for the person to do it again, other people.
Yeah. There's got to be a deterrent to theft. Okay, you got your ox back, but it caused inconvenience. You had to hunt down or have somebody hunt down the one that stole it. There's effort involved in recovering it. God's simply saying, hey, you know what? There's a minimum penalty on this, and there's got to be a deterrent. Verse number 5, if a man shall cause a field or vineyard to be eaten, and shall put in his beast, and shall feed in another man's field. Of the best of his own field, and the best of his own vineyard shall he make restitution. Again, God is establishing there are some rights of the property owner. Basic rights. Hey, a lot of times, if there's occasion when we watch Justin's dogs. Well, I don't have a fenced-in yard to corral them because we're not in the dog market right now. But our neighbor, the Blaine, highway patrolman, he has a fenced-in yard, and he's gone probably 3/4 of the time. Wow, it's not a problem using his yard. Well, if we ask him, as we have, he said, sure, they can have the backyard, and then it's fine. But if I just assume that it's fine, it's not. Why? Because there's some property rights and God's establishing, hey, you just don't do what you want to do. You got to control your stuff, your animals. And then if your animal ruins stuff, you're liable. There's got to be some care given, and that's what God's laying out. Go down to verse number 7. If a man shall deliver unto his neighbor money or stuff to keep, and it be stolen out of the man's house, if the thief be found, let him pay double. So again, the thief is caught. There's got to be a minimum. It's just not, okay, here's the stuff I stole. No, you pay double. A deterrent God's laying out. Verse number 8, if a thief be not found, then the master of the house shall be brought unto the judges to see whether he have put his hand into his neighbor's goods. God's laying out, if you choose to accept watching or taking another's property, there's some care that's necessary on your part. It's brought before the judges because even if we give due diligence to care for whatever is entrusted to us, things can happen. And so the judges would weigh out whether you did your due diligence in caring for the stuff. Because typically, if you're entrusted to care for somebody's stuff, there's many times that there would be, okay, our valley, it seems like storage units are like dandelion seeds nowadays. If something's going up, what's being built there? Storage units. Oh, I should have guessed. So you're entrusting. There's some responsibility, limited, obviously. If somebody breaks into your particular unit, there's limited. They fence them now. There's some that have the gates and all the rest of it. Well, that's doing giving evidence that, hey, I'm doing what I can to care for your stuff while you pay me to allow you to store it here. God's just establishing there's responsibility of the caretaker to do what he can to watch over your stuff. Verse number 9, for all manner of trespass, whether it be for ox or ass or for sheep or for raiment or for any manner of lost thing which another challenges to be his, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges, and whom the judges shall condemn, he shall pay double unto his neighbor. So the losing party pays double. One thing that has kind of I don't know what I guess you'd call it, frivolous lawsuits can destroy people. And if the goal is just simply destroy people, those that have the means just take them to court over everything. And even if they lose the case, the person bringing the case ought to have some skin in the game, and that's what God's saying here. Hey, if you bring a charge that this guy has got your stuff, okay, let's investigate it. If he has your stuff, he pays you double. If he does not have your stuff, you just brought this suit, then guess what? You pay. And that would eliminate a whole lot of all these crazy lawsuits that just drag things out forever. Because they know ultimately, many of them, they will lose. But they have the means. And so they can just drain your wallet dry by taking you to court over things that ultimately you're going to win, but you really don't win because you had to pay for the lawyers, you had to pay the court costs. We've got it all. God laid it out, what would be fair and what would be right. But we've abandoned a whole lot of that. Verse number 10, if a man deliver unto his neighbor an ass, the word deliver is to watch for pay. Goes on, or sheep or beast to keep, and it die, or be hurt or driven away, no man seeing it, then shall an oath of the Lord be between them both, that he that hath not put his hand unto his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall accept thereof, and he shall not make it good. Due diligence, again, is the key. Verse number 12, and if it be stolen from him, he shall make restitution unto the owner thereof. So God's, if you're going to be in the business of having storage units, there is some responsibility on your part. If you're doing the due diligence to care for their stuff, cameras, all this stuff today, then it's the owner's responsibility. They got signs, in parking lots even. We're not responsible for any items stolen out of your vehicle. To a great extent, that is true, but it's not 100% correct. And that's why most big parking lots, there's cameras everywhere. Why? Because the courts have found, you can slap all the signs you want saying it's not our responsibility, but yes, you're inviting them on your property, and therefore the laws of liability, there's an element on your part that is your responsibility, whether you got a big sign up saying anything or not. But anyway, God's simply saying, hey, let's be fair in our business practices and give care. Verse 13, if it be torn in pieces, then let him bring it for a witness, and he shall not make good that which was torn. If something happens beyond his control, he's done due diligence, but stuff still happens. It's like, all the safety devices under the sun are on everything. As I've said, ladders are a good example, because, you got a 10-foot ladder, but you can only go up 2 steps. Why? Because injury or death might happen. You go, well, what's the point in the ladder then? There's still some liability if there was something hazardous. Doesn't matter what the sign says. Anyway, God's laying out all these. Verse 14, he says, if a man borrow aught of his neighbor, and it be hurt or die, the owner thereof being not with it, he shall utterly make good. He says, hey, you're responsible for what you borrow. There's an element of responsibility that ought to be taken when you borrow things. Verse 15, but if the owner thereof be with it, he shall not make it good. If it be an hired thing, it came for his hire. Hired to do a job, he brings tools, the tool breaks. Well, the owner of who hired you is not responsible if your tool breaks on his job. That's just part of business. You are responsible for the tools when you're hired to do a job. And so the hiring part makes the exception. The owner said, yeah, I hired him. His drill broke, but it's not on me. He's the one that is using it, and so God's just laying out some basically common sense. The tools come with the hired job. Verse 16, if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed, and he lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. Entice means to persuade or seduce. It's not implying force. Not just if she becomes pregnant, God's saying his obligation is to marry her. And God's just laying out, hey, there's, again, it's in the area of responsibility. You're going to be responsible. If her father utterly refuse to give her unto him, he shall pay money according to the dowry of virgins. So many things concerning unmarried daughters, the father has veto power. If she enters into a contract, and we'll see the husband, or if they're married, the father, if she's not married, has the right to say, no, this is not a good deal, and he can throw out a contract without any obligation then on her part. So in this case, if the guy's a bum and dad says no, well, he still owes for his actions. It's not can't say, well, he didn't want me to marry, so I don't have any responsibility. Yeah, you still carry responsibility. Verse 18, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. And it implies a practicing witch. Like the witch of Endor that Saul goes to. It was widely known. This was her practice. This is what she was doing. It's not like, in the back in some of the history of our own country, where, if somebody was what you deemed odd, you couldn't just claim that they're a witch. But some of that did happen. Just because somebody does things different than you, doesn't constitute them being, in this case, a witch. Verse 19, whosoever lieth with a beast shall surely be put to death. Man is not an animal, despite what society tries to claim. On one hand, it's just so, on one hand, they want to claim that they're an animal, but then on other laws, no. Well, you got to be consistent. But at any rate, we find that God is saying, hey, man's not an animal, therefore he shouldn't live like one. He should control himself. She should control herself. It's not to cross over. It's something that God put the strongest of deterrence shall be put to death. In our world today, with everything just really getting stranger by, you can marry literally anything. You can marry your dog if you want to. They've made a mockery of what marriage is, and that's by design. They ultimately, I think, if the Lord tarries, I think we'll see marriage being non-existent, basically. To a great degree it is today. You got to shack up for 10 years just to see if you're compatible, then you might marry the girl or the guy. That's our society today, and there's no stigma on it. I'm living with my girlfriend. There's no stigma to it. There was, in our history, a very strong stigma, and it was a deterrent to just, hey, a revolving door type living. And that's what God's laying out here. He's saying, hey, there's boundaries here. Let's use some common sense. But in case common sense is lacking, here's the rules. Here's the law. This is what is borders out onto craziness. And we see, when you throw out God's word, you see craziness going on even today. Thou shalt neither vex a stranger nor oppress him. God's simply saying, hey, taking advantage of anybody. A stranger is one that is not familiar with how things are done in a particular area, and that makes him vulnerable. He trusts you. When you hire somebody that you have no expertise or understanding of how it, you're really at the mercy of the person that you hire. Because they can say, boy, you know what, this needs replaced, this needs replaced. What are you going to say? Hey, if it needs replaced, I guess we got to do it. They can run the bill up, and unfortunately, that's part of our society. They'll run the bill way up, and what do you don't have any, because you don't know. He can hold, he can say, well, here, I'll leave all the parts. Well, what do I want those for? If they're junk, throw them away. But he knows whether they're really junk or not. And so God's just laying out, hey, don't take advantage of people. Because they don't understand that what you're working on, then, it's like vehicles today. You can't say, hey, you know what, I want to buy a base model. Crank windows. I want to push up and down my locks. Air conditioning, I want to just spin the triangle window around, and the faster I go, the more air conditioning I get. I don't want a radio. Nothing. You can't do it. They don't sell them. When the base manufacturer suggested price, well, they don't make those. So when you open the hood on a newer vehicle, you don't hardly see the engine. Why? Because they got plastic shrouds everywhere. You got to disassemble everything, and they know the average guy or average gal is going to open that hood and say, I don't have a clue what's going on under here. Back in the day when you could set in the engine compartment and change spark plugs. Why? Because you didn't have all this. Granted, the computer stuff, again, computers are great when they're working, and they're a nightmare when they're not. I don't know how computer savvy you might be to all the sensors that are on newer vehicles, and they're interconnected. It's a maze. What's that force the average guy or the bulk of population? If something goes wrong, I got to take it to the shop. There's not a chance that, you can buy all the diagnostic testers and you can get the codes and say, oh, this is, and narrow it down, but you're still in the dark, at least the average person. And so when you take it to the repair guy shop and they pull out they say, oh, this sensor's bad. You say, well, show me. How do you know it's bad? Because believe me, there's a whole lot of guessing going on. It's easier for them to just pull out sensors, replace it. Why? It's not on their dime, it's on yours. And if, well, we tried this and it still doesn't work, so something else must be wrong. And by the time it's done, you can owe half your car's vehicle's worth, and you go, wow, we had to fix everything, or else because it's all interconnected, it wouldn't work otherwise. So God's saying, hey, wait a second. There's a responsibility on both sides, but we've gone way past that. Verse 22, ye shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. Afflict. Bring any undue stress, difficulty, etc. Why? Because they're already under stress. They're already under difficulty. Navigating life as a single mom, raising kids, it's not an easy task. And so God's saying, hey, there's nobody, because Bible time, the husband would look out for the wife and the children. if he's not any longer there, then God says, then I'm going to look out for him. You better be careful how you treat widows and children. And that would be, I don't know, it's not age 26, believe me. But I know insurance, the government is deemed, when they raised the, parents are responsible for insurance on their kids till they're 26, yet you don't have any say in if they're 12 and want to become a girl, you don't have any say. You can't have it both ways. You can't sit there and say, you got to pay for this, and yet you can't tell them that they're a boy and they're going to be called a boy and throw out all the pronoun garbage and say, no, not at our house. But we see the end, or a little bit more of the end result of just ignoring God's directives. But God's saying, hey, extend kindness toward, goes at verse 23, if thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry at all unto me, I will surely hear their cry. It's worse than having the big brother come and call you on treatment of the younger brother. God has everything at his disposal. He can make your life absolutely miserable. He can remove any favor that he, there's no way we can measure God's favor, because he's unlimited in what he can do. He tells us the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and he turneth it whithersoever he wants to. You say, well, where's free will? Where is it? Where's the free will? Where does free will apply? In salvation. God says, I will not pressure somebody to accept the free gift of salvation. But God didn't say that he wouldn't turn the king's heart, because he flat out tells us he can do that. And we see throughout the Bible he has done that. So free will applies to salvation. Everything else is on the table. God can give favor and cause great blessing, or he can remove that favor and cause great difficulty. Why? Keeping in mind, the goal of Satan is to take everybody to hell. Make everybody's life miserable. Destroy any good. That's Satan's objective. The only reason he doesn't flat out do all that he would like to do is God's limitation. And so if God reigns in his limitation, Satan has a heyday. He can destroy everything you've got. And the book of Job illustrates that. The minute he had the okay, it was all gone in one day. It's just like he was sitting at the edge of his seat, couldn't wait till the clock struck midnight and the okay was given. He destroyed it all. And so to discount God's favor is to go against your own self. So God lays out, he says, hey, I'm going to look out for the widow. I'm going to look out for the children that cannot fend for themselves. I'm going to be their source of help, and everything is available to me to help them. Also, then my wrath shall wax hot, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows, your children fatherless. Kill you with the sword. It can be a slow death. Oh, a again, as God takes his favor away, you have to work that much harder to gain anything. It's cutting your life shorter. So we find that God lays out a severe penalty for treating those that are unable to defend themselves, and you take advantage. Verse 25, if thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as an usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. The context is poor, meaning lacking necessities. Again, we see it in our own society. What is poor in the United States? It's hard for us to really understand the bus routes in West Virginia. There was a government housing that we got a number of children from. The kids would tell us, we're supposed to get air conditioning because it's deemed that that's a right. And yet, I didn't have air conditioning. There were some sticky hot summer nights that, yeah, air conditioning would have been great. Yet, the government would put the air conditioning in, and then they'd buy their new plasma TV. And you're going, wait a second. If you're poor, then you're lacking necessities. The air conditioning isn't a necessity. It's an awful nice thing. I understand that, but it's not a necessity. A cell phone is not a necessity, and on and on. But we've got it all mixed up, and that's because the socialist point of view has been shared in our country for generations now, to the point where it's expected. If I don't have it, then the government better supply it, because the whole affordable housing is a joke. We subsidize, and we have for generations. And yet, so we make their rent cheap so they can have all the amenities that the working guy can have. He scrimps and saves so he can buy, but then we take our tax money and we throw it over here to somebody who doesn't really want to work or wants to work part-time, because after all, I've got, the doctor tells me if I work full-time, it'll overtax my body or my brain or whatever. They've got excuses that just never run dry. And so we've gotten to the place where, well, yeah, they deserve everything that I've worked for, but they don't have to work for it. Well, that's socialism. Ultimately, everybody's on an equal plane, paying their fair share of taxes. But nobody ever wants to give a definition to what fair share is. Why? Because the minute they give a definition, they'll say, okay, if you make $500,000 a year or more, then you pay X amount. Well, you can work your income so you're at $499 forever, because you can defer all kinds of things. You can put it, and so they don't want to define it. Fair share is just man, so Billy Bob can have everything that you have, though he makes, $50,000 a year, you make $500,000 a year. Everybody's got to have the same stuff. But it's not how God laid it out. He said, hey, if you work hard and you're willing to work 60 hours a week where Billy Bob will only work 25, well, they shouldn't have the same amount. He's saying there's an element of responsibility for everybody. But anyway, we'll try to keep moving through these, but we'll pick it up next week. Heavenly Father, pray that you might help us, that, Lord, we would stand with your word on what's right. Lord, though society might have all kinds of other views, may we keep our bearings. Bless the service to follow in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, got about 13 minutes. We'll have the morning service.